Welcome to True Wellness with Dr. D, the podcast where we explore what it takes to live with vitality, balance, and purpose. I am Dr. D, and each week I'll bring you powerful tools, inspiring stories, and expert insights to help you thrive in every area of your life. From health and wellness to mindset and navigating life's challenges, this podcast is your guide to creating a life of true well-being. Let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of True Wellness with Dr. D. I'm so glad to have you all here. And Cindy, I am thankful to have you here and all the gifts that you have to share with our listeners today. So you guys, I want to introduce you to Cindy Warden, She is not just a transformational coach and a TEDx speaker. Her TEDx, by the way, is amazing. We'll make sure that it's in the details of the podcast information for you all so you can watch it. But she is a women's potential expert. What does that mean? It means that she helps women break free from limiting beliefs, all those kind of childhood conditioning and societal expectations that really hold them back. And she works with empowering her clients to release those inner barriers so that they can, step into that more confident, fulfilled person that they want to be, unlocking, their personal and professional success that they know in their hearts that they're meant for. So Cindy has had a range of different clients, ranging from, Grammy-nominated artists and top 10 finalists on The Voice to entrepreneurs and Fortune 100 executives. She is, on a mission to really help women create extraordinary, soul-fulfilling success in every aspect of their life, which has me really excited because I know that there is so much that we are going to learn from her in today's episode. Cindy, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I am so excited. This is so great.
Yeah, you guys, Cindy and I have been on the TEDx journey together. And from the very first moment that I heard her first, when we do TEDx, we go through all these versions of our talk, right? But even from that very first version of the talk, I was like, oh my gosh, this is such an important message. These are the things that we all need to hear because I think, Cindy, we get stuck sometimes in our own minds. It's almost like we have a negative thought about ourselves and then it moves into this spiraling vortex that goes into never, never land. And then we work ourselves out of that spiraling vortex. So I am so glad that you're here. Tell us.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your journey. I mean, I know you've got a very interesting story that's led you down this path.
Yeah, my childhood was pretty unique. And it was really the foundation for, I think, so many of the limiting beliefs I formed about myself. I grew up believing, that I was some version of inadequate, unlovable, and defective. And it wasn't until years later that I realized that these were just limiting beliefs holding me back in my life, my relationships, my career. They even impacted my health, which I know we will talk about.
Yes.
But, before I get into my story, it dawned on me too that there's probably a lot of listeners who have no concept as to what a limiting belief actually is. So before I share my journey, let me just share a little bit about what a limiting belief is. You might think of it as just like a thought or an assumption that you've come to believe is true. And the great news is that it's not a fact. It is a story that we've been telling ourselves and we think it's true. The limiting beliefs, I mean, they feel kind of weighty, don't they? It's just like, they're weighty. And I think that gives them like a sense of certainty, right? That the sense of certainty, they're pretty weighty. And so they hold us back in life and really impact what we believe is possible for us. But we can rewrite them We need to, because they really act as filters
Yes.
as to the way that we think and feel about ourselves, the way we interpret
Yes.
situations. As I came to find out, they impact the choices, our behaviors that we make. And, just as an example, say you grew up with a really critical parent.
Yes.
You might have a belief, I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
Maybe, and happens to a lot of the women I work with, maybe they only really felt seen or celebrated when they were achieving.
Mm.
All your worthiness, is contingent on what you achieve. As women, we are subjected, I think, to so many societal beliefs, these expectations that I have to look a certain way to be
Yes.
loved and
Yes.
accepted.
Yes.
If I advocate for myself, I'll, appear to be bossy. I have to work twice as hard to be competent, or I have to prioritize everybody else over myself.
We see that so much. I can't tell you how many times I go through that with my clients. The thing, Cindy, about these limiting beliefs is they're sneaky. It's almost like sometimes we don't even know that they're there. They just kind of lurk, and they're like a filter that we see everything through, and we don't even know. Like when you walk around with sunglasses for a really long time, it's like you don't know until you take the sunglasses off. Like, oh my gosh, I was wearing sunglasses in the house. No wonder why everything was so dark. But that's the thing about those limiting beliefs.
That it is. I love it that you said that, because I think of them almost like background music.
Yeah.
Right? It's just been playing that you don't even realize they're there.
Yes.
And, and it's why it's so important to bring them to light.
Yes.
Because they do impact the way we see things and the choices that we make.
Yes.
So, yeah. So you are so right. I love it. You call them sneaky beliefs.
Well, and the other thing is too, there's no escaping them, in the sense that we are all exposed to limiting beliefs, and they happen to all of us. And even when we think we may have cleared some out, there might be other little ones that sneak in.
Yeah. I always say, I call them, sometimes they're like an octopus.
Yes.
Right? They're like the body of the octopus is this belief. And sometimes the tentacles that wrap themselves around us, they're these negative thoughts we think, or like other kind of sub-beliefs that grow out of that, but they hold us hostage.
Yes, they do.
I was a prisoner to my limiting beliefs for so long, and I thought it's so perfect. My last name is Warden.
That's great.
Yeah, right. But I had to set myself free. So, and it is so important that we do that, because I think, so many times we have challenges in life,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so easy for us to kind of want to rearrange what the deck chairs on the Titanic, that we just think, I'll just change the situation. I'll get out of my marriage, or I'll change jobs, or if I do this. And so we change what is happening on the outside. And yeah, we feel better, but we never look on the inside to think, gosh, what got me into this situation? Or why did I think I had to stay in it?
Yeah.
And so therefore, because we don't kind of examine and go within, we end up with a rinse and repeat of a brand new version of what we don't want.
Yes.
Because that operating system, we didn't change it. It's still working in the background.
Exactly. We can put new input in, but if it's going through the same filters, the same system, we're still getting the same version of whatever that was out the other side.
Yes. Yes. Totally. Somebody will say, like a woman, a woman will come to me, and she's just miserable in her job. And she's ready, I'm ready to do, I'm ready to become a beautician, or I'm going to go, I mean, who knows, going to start some whole new career. And I'm like, wait, let's slow down.
Yes.
because we're just going to get a whole new version of what we don't want. And a lot of times when we look at what is driving the misery within the job, it's like sometimes it's like we're the makers of our own misery because of these beliefs that we
Absolutely.
carry, and we don't need to change anything but ourselves.
Yes. I always say the subconscious has a way of just knocking. It's like knocking, knocking, knocking. And it's going to allow us to repeat that lesson, right? Over and over and over again until we actually learn the lesson. So if we're just ignoring it, pretending like it's not there and not actually dealing with it, then we just get more of the same, even though it may have a different flavor or a different tint to it.
Yes, you are so right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned, when we talk about my TED Talk, I talked about limiting beliefs being this backpack that we carry.
Yes.
And, I want to interject here. You don't have to have a whole bunch of trauma in your background.
No, not at all. We're all human. This is
Beliefs.
human condition.
Yeah, it's what happens. For my story, I did. My journey is pretty unique, Danielle. As an infant, I was adopted by a couple of fun-loving parents. But when I was 6 years old, my adoptive mom, she was only 41, and she died from ovarian cancer. And talk about, really experiencing heartbreaking loss at the beginning of my life. And looking back on it, I think being adopted and then losing a mom at 6, how could I not kind of form a belief, wow, people leave. People leave. People leave me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to interject because it was kind of pivotal to my story too. On her deathbed, my mom made a whole list of things that she wanted my dad to do for me. And one of those things was piano lessons.
Oh.
And so when I was 8 years old, I got a piano. My dad got me a piano, and I fell in love with music. And it became really apparent very quickly that I was gifted. I picked it up so quickly. By the time I was 13 or 14, I was playing like songs, that were really designated like advanced for graduate students, and so on. I had a classical singing voice to match my piano prowess. I became a musical theater major. I loved performing. I became a musical theater major. And when I was in college, I discovered I was funny. That was kind of my jam. And so I interject that because I got so much positive attention from my talent.
Yes.
I really grew to believe that it was where all my worthiness came from. Okay. And it was also my lifeline. And to back up, after my dad died, he eventually remarried. And I found myself, I just found myself in a family where I did not fit in. I still don't. I mean, I'm just so different. I was this outgoing theater kid, and I grew up in a family that was pretty reserved, stoic, quiet, and I felt, feeling like I didn't fit in. As kids, we don't have a lot of logic.
Right. Your brain can't process it. Yeah.
We don't have logic to go, to really understand, I'm just different. And so to me, I made that mean something must be wrong with me.
Right.
And, there were unspoken messages and, quite frankly, a lot of spoken messages that I was supposed to be more like them. That's the way I felt. And so I just grew up feeling ashamed of who I was,
Yeah.
that I should be different than who I was. I went through a lot of criticism and correction, so much so that I was literally diagnosed with CPTSD in my
Mm.
adult life.
Yeah.
That's complex PTSD, which PTSD, like maybe like one traumatic incident that we have to work through. Complex
Right.
PTSD, sometimes 1,000 little paper cuts,
Yeah.
right, that add up. And so I went through like over a year of treatment, for the CPTSD, but I felt like I wasn't good enough, like I didn't belong. Oh my gosh, I was defective. I mean, it just ran the gamut. And
Yeah.
so all of my self-worth got attached to my career.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so it drove me, to achieve. I had, some wonderful successes. I did, cartoon voices for Disney. I did, TV with Jim Carrey, commercials and, stage performances and so on. But given I had a very perky and positive persona. And, kids who are traumatized, a lot of times we develop what I call a protective persona.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
You think that I have a big personality now. Oh my gosh, the comedy, when I realized, right, people laughed at me, it became a persona that I wore off stage. And if
Mm.
we were at a party, you would have met me and then you would have needed to take a nap after 5 minutes because I was so on all the time. And, because I just didn't believe that anybody could love me for who I was.
Right.
And so while it, drove me to succeed more than anything, Danielle, it held me back
Yeah.
because,
Of course.
because sometimes I could just let setbacks, and Lord knows there's a lot of setbacks in an actor's life. I could allow setbacks to, no big deal. But if it was something I really had my heart set on, or, a particular job I was going for of a particular resonance, it just triggered that, just that I was worthless, and it could just leave me in a fetal position, and it could take me weeks to really bounce back and keep going. And I think I would have had a lot more momentum,
Sure.
uh, and things could have ended up very differently for me if it wasn't because of the baggage that
Mm.
I was carrying. But when we get into talking about my health,
Yes.
I didn't really realize how those limiting beliefs were impacting me until I left the
Yeah.
industry.
It's interesting because limiting beliefs impact us all over. And I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing your story because there's so much there. And the truth is, I think that every single person listening can find something in the story that they can see for themselves in their own lives, right? From whether our parents intended or not intended to say or do things that impacted us in the way that it's had impacts on us, we all walk around having had some experiences that shape and color our entire lives,
Absolutely. Yeah. They shape and color our entire lives, and when and I think also, it's just, we all experience something painful, you know, um, and we develop these defense mechanisms to kind of guard ourselves against them. And, that's another thing, not just limiting beliefs, these coping strategies that
Sure.
we carry in our backpack. And I could win like gold medals for codependency and people pleasing and
Yeah.
perfectionism and approval seeking outside myself. Oh my gosh, I was a hot mess.
Got it. Well, they say, right, sometimes our biggest strengths are also our biggest weaknesses, right?
That's
And
right.
that I think really resonates here.
hmm it really does. And when I left the entertainment industry, it really was catapulted. I went through a divorce. I will say, I was married once before the husband I'm with now, and on the outside we looked like a match made in heaven, but on the inside, behind closed doors, it was pretty dysfunctional. And it became a wake up call. I got to the point I couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah.
But I was pretty, due to my childhood, I was pretty adept to not having my needs met. And so our beliefs too drive us into situations that are familiar for us.
Yes.
We might be miserable, but they're familiar and it's what's comfortable. And I got to the point where it was just so uncomfortable for me. I did have to make a change. And, I was always focused on him as, to what he needed to change. Yeah. And it wasn't until we broke up and it was what got me on my personal development journey.
Beautiful.
And I remember one morning looking in the mirror and going, wow, I walked into this knowing that it really wasn't fulfilling. What is it about me that made me think this was okay?
Yeah, I love that question. What is it about me? So often I find, just in dealing with clients that we are, as human beings, we're also adept at really kind of pushing off responsibility because there is a lot of sometimes pain, right? Difficulty, vulnerability that comes with turning that mirror around and having to say, okay, how am I contributing to this? Who am I being that has this occur? But there's so much gold there. There's so much gold. Yeah.
There isn't there. I run into so many people who will say, I just don't want to look. I don't want to look under the hood. I don't want to look because it is painful. It can be uncomfortable, but that's all temporary. Right. And it's kind of like a wound, right? We have to clean it out in order for it to heal. Otherwise, it stays there and it keeps, running the show.
Exactly.
I mean, the healing thing isn't linear, right?
It never is.
Right. It's just kind of all over the place, which I found out I started to really, unpack my beliefs. It started with relationship. And then when I left the entertainment industry, I was looking for a job.
Uh-huh.
And so I had a lot of trouble finding a job because I'd been a performer for over 20 years. And people said to me, what is it? Why do you want a desk job? And I finally got to the point, I just said, I like to eat. And so I landed into a job that was also in the entertainment industry. I was there for a while, and I'll just say I had a position. They liked me. I had proved that I was going to stick around, because people just thought I would get bored and up and leave. And I had a position that was created for me. And I learned very quickly, within about a month, I knew I wasn't in a good situation. It was pretty toxic. It was very volatile. And I'm going to interject that, I just internalized all of the toxicity. And I want to interject, Danielle, that there's some people that that atmosphere, you just went right over their heads. For me, there was a lot of it that had a resonance that was very familiar to what I went through as a kid.
That was a trigger.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, right, I just internalized. It was rinse and repeat. And I say that because, especially as women, just because something isn't a trigger for someone else, it doesn't mean that anything is wrong with you, because it is. It's because of your unique history, your background. You bring something to this situation that somebody else doesn't carry. So don't beat yourself up because of that. And so I had my feelings dismissed a lot as a kid. And so by high school, I was dealing with chronic depression, which followed me for over 20 years. I was told I'd never live my life off medication. I proved them wrong. But I had someone say to me, I wanted to leave after a month. It was so bad. And I had someone of authority say to me, you will never find another job like this, because it has prestige to it. You will never find another job like this. And mind you, I'd had a lot of trouble finding a job. I'd looked for a year and a half. You'll never find another job like this. Nobody will hire you if you leave now. You need to stay for at least a year. And I also grew up just feeling like, well, I guess everybody knows what's best for me, better for me than I do. And when your feelings are dismissed, I think you also learn to disregard your intuition, which I know you talk about,
Yes.
right? You also disregard your intuition. And so I just stuck it out. And pretty soon, I started to have all these UTIs. I started to have a lot of bladder infections.
Yeah.
And pretty soon that was just constant for me. And I suddenly was, sick enough. I needed to stay in the job that was making me sick because I needed the health insurance.
Golden handcuffs.
Yes. Okay. So I was going to work every day, down in Vicodin, trying to get through my day.
Wow.
I went through the Western medical, system of trying to figure out, what was wrong. I was examined by, some of the top, like, urology departments in the country. And I just didn't check off all the boxes for everything, and nobody could give me a diagnosis. And I finally had a urogynecologist diagnose me with interstitial cystitis.
Okay.
And I was given a medication for that. I lost half my hair with the medication. Finally, I had physical therapy and found something else that helped me. And about the time that I was diagnosed, and I was so scared, nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. About the time I got diagnosed, I think the day after, I lost all the feeling on my left-hand side. I ended up in the hospital because of that. And it was it was my brain's reaction to kind of like, I'm going to live, right?
Yeah.
I'm terminal. And it was right around the holidays. And I remember being at my sister-in-law's, and I had this itch on my chest, and I just kind of, went like this around my right breast. And all of a sudden there was this big lump in my breast.
Oh gosh.
Gunk.
Yeah.
And it ended up being a cyst. And then after about 6 months, they went back to check it. The cells were becoming atypical, meaning they could or couldn't become cancer. And I had to have a lumpectomy. And, and so it was, it took a lot for me to finally leave that job. I was there for like 4 or 5 years. This whole thing that went through. And when I look back, why did I stay? Well, I get in trouble when I disappoint others. Right? This job was created for me. Oh my gosh, so who am I? People will be mad at me. I'll never work again, right? The situation was familiar. I was used to tolerating like a lot of upset and so on. There was so much familiar and so many beliefs I had that I didn't advocate
Sure.
for myself. I
Yeah.
didn't advocate because of what I believed about myself. And when I left, I think I'd always known I loved psychology. And I
Hmm.
always knew that I wanted to be a coach. And Danielle, I, I had a business coach tell me that my niche was helping burned out women in the entertainment industry. And that made perfect sense, right? But I also knew at the time I wasn't on the other side of what had happened to me enough to really be able to help them.
Right.
And so when I talk about, that moment of looking in the mirror after my marriage and going, wait, what is it about me that made me think this was okay? And I went ahead and got married. And then, okay, what is it about me that made me stay in this situation again? When you talk about that knock,
Yes.
that we get that knock, sometimes we get the same lesson in a new version.
Yep. Until we really, really get it, right?
Yes. Or there's healing that we need to do on a deeper level.
Yes.
And boy, I have had to do a lot of deep inner work. And but it's been so worth it.
Hmm.
It's
Yes.
so worth it.
That's the kicker, right? It's a little scary jumping in, but once you're in, you're like, oh, the
Yes.
water's not so bad. This is actually pretty good.
Yes, no, exactly. And the getting there may be kind of hard, but the freedom on the other side, and like my people pleasing and things like that. Hey, you know what? That's all stuff that I continue to work on. Boy, I've gotten a lot better, but these beliefs, hey, they still rear their heads, but we have to become aware of them.
Yes.
Right? We have to look at them and become aware of them to stop and go, okay, wow, this is what's going on here. And and I think some people say you don't have to understand where they came from. You know what, for me, and I think for the women I work with, it usually helps to go back in time to kind of understand where they came from, because when you do, you can look at how it helped to survive your
Exactly.
situation many years ago.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, they are not serving me now. And had I not left that job, quite frankly, I'm really not even sure I would still be here.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so powerful because sometimes it is, we get trapped
Yeah,
until that trap becomes the wake up call. Like
yeah,
something's got to shift, something's got to change. And then it depends on us whether or not we have the courage and are ready to step into really examining and taking a look at that.
totally.
Yeah. So for our listeners, Cindy, talk to me a little bit about, because I'm sure they're hearing some version of themselves in these stories. How do they begin to break free from some of these limiting beliefs? How do they even begin to recognize, like, oh my gosh, I'm not really running the show here the way I want to be running the show. Something else back there is running the show. How do they begin to start to examine those things?
Yeah, I think, boy, a great avenue. I call it a brainwashing.
Brainwashing.
A little brainwashing that sit down on a piece of paper, sit down with a piece of paper and a pen, and boy, write down everything you're thinking,
Hmm.
the good, the bad, and the
Yeah.
ugly,
Yeah.
right?
Something about pen and paper. It's
There
something we're
is.
missing this day and age.
There really, what there is. And I mean, haven't there been studies that I think, like, using pen and paper, it's like a kinesthetic exercise. It
Yes, it is.
literally, I think it connects the head and the heart and like
Yes.
actually like stimulates memories, and things like that.
Different than the keyboard.
Yeah, it is. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. They, love it. Write it down. And, and I think a great question then to ask yourself, after you look at this, you can go, wow, when do I first remember feeling this way?
Yeah.
Right? And boy, that may take you back. I, and I'll interject, these beliefs, they don't have to come from a big event like a parent, like the loss of a parent, for instance.
Right.
Danielle, I remember this minuscule moment at my dad's funeral, my mom's funeral, my adopted mom's funeral. I was just 6 years old, and I was sitting next to my daddy, and he was clutching my hand. And the minister must have said something that it made my dad kind of squeeze my hand a little. And I remember looking up at him, and his eyes were bloodshot and just a puddle of tears in his eyes.
Yeah.
And I remember to this day having this thought, I had just lost my mommy, but my dad, my poor daddy, oh my gosh, I need to be a good girl.
Oh,
I need to make him happy. And I
yeah.
was so attached to my dad. And see, that was such a brief exchange. It was just a
Sure.
moment in time, right?
Yeah.
But it was this little minuscule moment that, see, often when someone is involved, a person who we deem of authority, like a parent, it could be a caretaker, it could be a teacher, right? Or society, whatever. And there's, especially if there's big emotion attached to it. Okay. And this little minuscule moment, right, that I think that was when I began to realize, hey, I'm responsible for everybody's happiness, right? So when we're writing, okay, it doesn't have to be some big moment. It can be just like a little minuscule exchange that ran so deep that is the root, right, of where this came from. Okay. And so you can look at, wow, okay, it helped me, it helped me survive, in my environment or whatever as a kid. And there can be, being an achiever, for instance, can be, a great thing because it gets you to a certain point, but like, for instance, if you're putting all your worthiness into it, or this idea, I can't disappoint other people.
Yes.
Wow. Oh, wow. Boy, that kept me in a job that almost killed me.
Yeah.
And it all dates back to this, and it's not serving me.
Yes.
So what do I need to do? Okay, well, I need to leave this job. I mean, I put myself in a situation, Danielle, where I had to walk away cold turkey.
Oh, which is scary in and of itself, right? Like, what
There
does
is.
the future hold? How am I going to do this? But it was
That's,
having such an impact on your physical health, your mental health, your emotional, like all of it.
yeah. And see, that is the point that I got to because I didn't take care of myself
Yeah. Mhm.
when my intuition was telling me that I needed to,
Yes.
but I learned to disregard all of that, and so I did not. And this is where I ended up because, I mean, we know all that stress, it causes inflammation. We end up with autoimmune issues, interstitial cystitis, like even my breast lump, all those things, depression,
Yes.
for me, and so on. I ended up with all of those things because my beliefs kept me in a situation that was not good for me.
Mhm.
And, had I done this inner work before that, I would have left. I would have been there a month and I would have been, see ya.
Yeah, I always say though, Cindy, I feel like everything happens for a reason, right?
It
Life
sure
is
does.
beautiful the way it unfolds.
But
And
sometimes we have to find the reason,
yes.
don't we? Yeah, sometimes we have to find it. Bad things
Yeah.
happen,
Yes.
but sometimes it's like sometimes to get through it, we even make up reasons or whatever for
Whatever it
to move
takes.
forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have to find that reason.
Yeah.
And it's a portal of possibility.
I love that portal of possibility. That's awesome.
right? It's
Yeah,
just like but if you're willing to walk through it, it's the portal of possibility. The only way out is through.
that's so true. It's so true. And the more and more we push it off or ignore it or avoid it, because I think at some level we always have this gnawing sense that, ooh, I've got to look at this.
Yeah, yeah. So I did a lot of looking and so
Yeah.
on, but when it comes to okay, where did I first feel this? I'm kind of getting back to what I was talking about. I went off on a tangent. Um, uh, yeah, I mean, where did I first feel this way? Oh, okay, totally understand. And you can kind of track where that has shown up in your life. And the beautiful thing about beliefs is they're not facts, they're just stories, right?
Right.
That we've told ourselves. We can
Yep.
rewrite the story, and we have to consciously start to rewrite it. And so if I believed that, if I didn't necessarily, if disappointing people wasn't on me, what
Yep.
would I do?
Yeah.
Well, I would have left. And so, it's like we have to start rewriting the story by showing up differently,
I love that. Yeah.
right? Rewrite the story by showing up differently. And a lot of people don't do it because it's uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable. Yeah. We get used to being in our own pattern, that doing something outside of that pattern, it feels strange. It feels uncomfortable until
Yeah, if
it becomes
it's
a
so,
new path.
yeah, right. And, sometimes they say, like the neural pathways in our brain, it's like a well-worn superhighway.
Yes.
And when we go to do something different, try to think differently or, or do something differently, it's like we're in a jungle, right? And so it feels uncomfortable. And that is what stops so many people because it feels uncomfortable. Well, if it feels uncomfortable, it can't be right. And I tell my clients in situations like this, if it's uncomfortable, you're doing it right.
You're on the right track. It's so funny. As you're saying that, it makes me think about weight loss, right? So
Yes.
there's a lot around weight loss, right? But one of the things that I see so consistently is people will lose weight, right? And then they won't know who that new person is. And until they've actually dealt with those underlying issues around their body, around who they are, around, for some people, weight is a protection. Until
Yes.
those things are dealt with, it's like they lose the weight, but the weight comes back on, you know?
Yeah. I mean, totally. Because, our beliefs, it's our identity.
Exactly.
They just become an identity. And if we have an identity, this belief, this identity that we are, um, I don't know, that we're not thin or we're not a healthy person or we don't eat healthy. It's like I see it time and time again. I mean, we just fall off the wagon and we
Yeah.
and we go back to the way that we were before, right? It all starts to come back on. So we have to. That's what I'm talking about. Rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. We try to change everything on the outside. I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to change jobs. I'm going to change relationships. But if we don't look at the inside and change who we are, the beliefs driving our choices, nothing is going to change. And so, I mean, we look at all where this comes from, and we have to start rewriting the story by showing up differently. And I began my personal development journey by just thinking, like, you just think positive. But, and when we don't believe that
Yeah.
new belief,
Yeah.
right, then it boomerangs.
Yes.
So I love the question. I love saying, like, I love the idea.
Mm.
I love the idea of, um, or eating healthy, for instance, or being a person who eats healthy, or I love the idea of being someone who advocates for myself.
Yes.
I love the idea that my worth isn't attached, to what I achieve. I love that. I love the idea of that. That's something we can get behind.
Yes, absolutely.
Rather than just go into that positive, trying to replace it with a positive belief.
Pretend.
We got to kind of create a bridge to
Yeah.
get there, right?
Yeah.
So we create that bridge, and then, okay, ask yourself, for instance, what would a person, right, who eats healthy, what would they do?
Yeah.
Well, they'd close the door on the chocolate cake for the time being, right?
Yes.
Or, if I advocate, a person who advocates for themselves, they would speak up in this situation, right? Or if my worth wasn't attached to like what I'm achieving, hey, I might not pull an all-nighter.
Right.
Right? I'm going to go get rest
Right.
because I know that once I do, I'm going to feel better. And I'm going to, just be more alert, thinking I'm going to be better for it in the morning if I take care of myself.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. What would you say, Cindy, in the work that you do with your clients, what is their biggest barrier to dismantling the limiting beliefs?
Oh my gosh, it's because they've been doing it for so long. Right? They've been doing it for so long, and there's some kind of payoff.
Yes.
To it.
Mm-hmm.
In psychology, they call it a secondary gain.
Yes.
That, I may know that I'm just going to talk about advocating for myself. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I may want to advocate for myself out here, but if I have this secondary gain that when I don't advocate for myself, people like me.
Right.
Right. I stay
doing it.
nice. I don't ruffle any feathers. I just, I don't disappoint anybody. Right. People like me. And when people like me and I don't disappoint, that is far less scary than advocating for myself.
Yeah.
So that payoff, that secondary gain is so strong.
Yes.
Okay. There's a payoff to it that we don't move. And so when I ask a client, and when I ask a client, what's the payoff to this? What are you getting from this?
What payoff? There's no payoff. It's all awful.
Exactly.
Oh,
exactly. I'm miserable. I hate this. Blah blah. Oh my. And then once we realize that it's, oh wow.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, okay. And so that when we realize the payoff, that starts to dismantle it.
It does.
Right. A little bit. And so we can start to play with some, alternative ways of thinking, some bridge thinking. Like I talk about, like, I love the idea of, or I'm willing to try on the belief of, what that would look like for us. And so here's the deal. We go out and we start just baby steps.
Mm-hmm.
Baby steps to try on this, because if we do too much too soon, right, we might get some backlash and that can derail us.
Yes.
So just little baby steps to test the waters. Our brains are evidence-seeking machines.
Yes, they are.
Right? And whatever we believe, right, we find proof for it.
Yes.
Outside. And so when we start showing up differently, trying to think differently, making different choices, moving through that, being uncomfortable, when we start to show off and we get a little payoff, right? I advocated for myself. Wow. Hey, just the way I felt. Wow. That felt good.
Yeah.
That felt good. Yes. And so then you see, our brain starts to get the evidence the brain starts to get the evidence. Oh,
Yeah.
when I advocate for myself, I feel good. Oh, okay, let's do it again. Right. And so that starts to build up.
Yeah. It builds a new neural network, literally builds a new
It
neural network.
really does. We're chopping down that jungle and building that new neural pathway, and it's been proven, right, that, when we don't use a neural pathway, it's like we start to lose the synapses,
Yes.
right? It's just like that disengages and we start to form a new one. We start to form a new identity.
Yes.
Right? As someone who advocates, I am someone who advocates for myself because we do it over and over again through repetition. And we have to remember that belief that became so ingrained, we didn't get there overnight.
Exactly.
Right? It's going to take a little time.
Yeah.
And to have patience and self-compassion, right? Just that so much self-compassion for ourselves that we're doing the best we can, but with time, and that's why, the work that you do, is so important. And the work, that I do is, it's just like we can kind of be accountability partners.
Yeah. Yeah.
Accountability partners for people and cheerleaders, you're doing it great that we have this person that advocates for us, advocating for ourselves, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really, really, really powerful stuff. So, Cindy, I always ask all of our guests, what are 3 actionable things that our listeners can begin to take on after they've done listening to this podcast that can help move the dial for them in their life?
You know what, Danielle, I'm going to go to those 3 questions that I asked during my TED Talk, my TEDx talk.
I love it. Yes.
Because it really, it works well. Number 1, think of an area of your life as you listen to this where you want more success.
Yes.
For instance, maybe something's going on in your marriage, or with your kids, or something, or what's going on in your career, your health, your weight, whatever it is. Even, hey, I have clients that, they don't want any downtime. Downtime is bad, right? Because they've learned they've got to achieve, all their worthiness is there. So, even more free time, downtime. And so name that in your mind. Okay. What is that area? You know what it is. It's the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay. And then ask yourself too, I can't succeed in this area because.
Good question.
Right? Because, and you get this STEM sentence, you fill it in. Well, gosh, I can't disappoint others. Or, it's my job to take care of everybody else. Or free time. Well, I'll be looked at as lazy. It's crazy. And when we look at that, wow, we uncover the belief that is holding us back, right? Okay, and so if you were to kick that to the curb for good, like if you lost your ability to even think it, what would be possible for you?
Yeah.
What would you do? You do something different.
Yes.
And you do something different than you're doing right now. And so then the thing is, you got to take a deep breath and you've got to go make that change and make that change a little at a time. But if you just go through that 3-step process and take action, nothing changes unless you take action. You can
say that's right.
You can sit and you can think the thoughts all day long, but you have got to give your brain that evidence through the action you take for there to truly be transformation.
Yes. Yes. Knowledge is powerless without action.
Perfect. You're right. You are so right.
Beautiful. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, for being vulnerable, for sharing your story, for giving
Oh,
us.
thank you for having me.
Yeah, I think, we all get stuck. And then sometimes we're like, why are we stuck? And so this has been really eye-opening and given our listeners a new way to begin to start to look at the things in the life and the areas of their life where they're not satisfied, where things aren't going the way they want them to go, and then giving them power and control over making the choices. So thank you so much for that. Can you
Thank you.
share with our listeners who may just be listening, maybe they won't see the information in the bio, share with them how they can find you, Cindy?
Oh, okay. So my website is cindywarden.com. You can find me on Instagram at Cindy Warden Coaching. And Facebook, I guess, you can look me up there. I'm on LinkedIn, as well. And so I'm not quite a TikToker yet. I need to get with it.
Oh, me neither.
So yeah, you should get with the program. But yeah, that's where they can find me. And, I would love, please reach out. I, would love to connect with you.
Love it. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here today and for sharing your gifts. And thank you for going through your journey of life so that you could be here to impact all the other lives that you're going to touch as people listen to this. So
Thank you. Thank you for all the beautiful work you do.
Thank you.
Because I know you impact a lot of lives too. This was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. This is Dr. D, reminding you to tune into your body, reconnect with what matters, and embrace the journey to true wellness. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to redefine their health. Let's keep redefining wellness and empowering change together. See you next Thursday for the next episode drop.